Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. We're talking about grief. You can't heal if you keep disappearing to be loved. We're talking about grief on this morning. I'm excited about today's conversation. It's the Weight We Carry series. And, you know, I think that when we start talking about all of the weights that we carry in life, the weight again of our wrestle, all of the weights, the weight of our wrestle, the weight of our exhaustion, the weight of our identity. I think that you know, in this season, I think it'll be healthy to talk about the weight of our grief and not just the grief of the people, right? It's grieving us, right? Versions of ourselves that we didn't honor, that we didn't get a chance to really hold space for. And I think that it's important that, we acknowledge that grief on today, because in acknowledging that grief, I think that we'll find some peace in being able to let it go, right? To being able to let it go. So we're talking about the weight of grief this week, the grief of our love of self, the grief with our interactions with others, the grief in our interactions with others, the grief in our focus, and the grief in our emotions, you guys. I am excited about today's lesson. So let's get to it. I'm just looking for it on this morning. So you can't heal what you won't honor. All right. You can't heal what you won't honor. So my big question for you today is, what are you grieving right now? Okay. Is it a relationship? Is it a version of you? An unfulfilled hope? It's okay, right? Like, we all have dreams, we all have goals and ambitions, right? And somehow, right, life gives a detour. And some of us have been told to suck it up, right? Suck it up, get past that. But we really don't take the time to really sit with that grief, and really acknowledge it, right, for what it was. If it was a relationship, if it was just a journey that ended up fizzling out, right, as a consequence of life. And so today we're going to honor that. This whole week we're going to honor that. If you haven't already, make sure that you join the Elevating Life group, where we're going to be having those conversations. Make sure that you join the YouTube channel so that you can get those replays, or just get the notification of this life lesson, because I think grief is something that uh, we talk about. We don't talk about enough, and we don't acknowledge that we grieve every day, right? Like, in a sense, the whole term to me of good morning is this loss, right? This loss of yesterday. And how do we do that in a healthy way, like without losing ourselves? So it's Mindset Reset Monday. Today's title is The Weight of Unspoken Grief. I want to welcome you back. Okay. I want to welcome you back to Life Lessons, because this conversation, well, I want to welcome you back to Life Lessons, which is a part of Project Life. But this conversation, like I said, we talked about the weight of our truth, honoring our exhaustion, and reconnecting with our identity. And my hope is, again, today to make a space for individuals that's grieving, because we don't just grieve people, we grieve versions of ourselves. So my question for you is, what are you grieving right now? Right, not just the people that you lost, but the versions of yourself that you had to let go. Right, the versions of yourself that you had to let go, the dreams that really didn't come to manifest themselves, the relationships that didn't survive, the people, right, that you were, the person that you were before, right, before trauma changed you, before the heartache changed you, before the move changed you. Because here's the truth: you can't heal what we don't honor. I love how Jay-Z say, you cannot heal what we don't reveal. And a lot of times we're stuffing that deep, deep, deep down inside, or we're running from it, or we didn't even know that we had permission to acknowledge it. So This is what we're talking about today. So let me tell you about a client that I worked with. I'm very selective when it comes to working with grief of a loss of a person, right? Um, because that's a heavy weight to carry, you know. And I definitely want to honor people's spaces and be a more of a listening ear and a supportive partner than an individual who is treating you for that grief. However, I am very open to working with people who are grieving aspects of their life, because I think that we have only understood grief in one way. Right. We have only understood grief, a lot of us, and as a person. So I met with one of my clients. She came to my office and, she's like, I don't know why I can't move forward. I am doing all the right things, right? Therapy, the self care, I'm putting the boundaries in place, but I still just feel so stuck. And so my first question to her, and this specific person after reading her assessment was, well, what are you grieving? All right. And she looked confused, like, I'm not grieving nobody, right? Nobody died. So what are you talking about? And I said, grief isn't about physical death. All right. What have you lost that you haven't acknowledged? What have you lost that you haven't acknowledged? And she sat with that, and I think that that question really pierced her, right? And so she became emotional. But here's what she realized, and what so many of us don't realize is that we don't grieve people. We don't only grieve people, we grieve versions of ourselves, the versions of ourselves that trusted easily before, we got betrayed, right? And that betrayal taught us otherwise. The version of you that had hope before disappointment, dimmed your light, the version of you that felt safe before that trauma happened, and now you're hyper vigilant, right? So today is about the weight of the unspoken grief. All right, that unspoken grief. When you lost something or some part of you that really mattered, but you've never given yourself space to really mourn that, right? So we're talking about love of self on this morning. Good morning, big little brother. We're talking about self-love on this morning. And the part of self-love is acknowledging, right? Acknowledging our pain. I think that a lot of times when we think about self-love, we only think about it in, the spas and the, getting my nails done and all of those things. And I mean, there's a place for that, but there's also a place to acknowledge the pain. Right. And as this grown age of an adult, to let yourself know, right, that you're okay, right? And that is safe, right? It's safe for you to sit in that, So what is my why for this session? I created this lesson because too many people dismiss grief, right? Either internally or, or externally, right? Like our communities, it's like, get over that, right? It didn't happen. I had one of my best friends, she got pregnant very young, right? And her focus was just a couple of my friends, her focus was definitely to graduate from school and go to college and all of that. But all of a sudden she has this baby to take care of, and it's like really giving herself permission as an adult to grieve whatever those ideas was when she was a youth, right? A teenager, just having fun. And then she just automatically had to step into responsibility, right? And holding a space for her while she grieves that. And then it's like, okay, well, what do you want to do now? Okay, what do you want to do with your life now? And she ended up going back to college. I mean, her degree is definitely in the 0.0 percentile of African American women. I mean, she's highly educated, but there needed to be a space for her to really acknowledge that, there was a diversion. This was not a plan, right? And a lot of us, because a lot of where we're at right now in our life, it's not what was planned. So we're catching up, or we feel like we're behind, or we are in survival mode, or just trying to make ends meet. And I just want to say, like, hey, one, it's okay if that's where you're at. But two, get support, because if you had a vision for your life and now you're out of alignment, and I talk about this, then you may be suffering from that lemons condition where you lack the energy, the motivation, the organizational skills, necessary supports, and the skill sets to really feel the fulfillment that you desire and deserve. So again, I created this lesson because too many of us just dismiss the grief, right? We say it could have been worse. Other people had it harder. I should be over this by now. But grief, denied becomes a pain cycle. All right. And it starts to mimic itself in our relationships, and it starts to pattern itself in these emotions. So this lesson is about giving yourself permission to name what you lost and then honor that so that you can finally heal. Right. So you can finally heal and be able to move on, right, with the full acknowledgement. And I say the best place to change your life is right here, right? Like it's really about coming present with the reality of what is, right? Not with the imagery or the desire of what was or what could have been, because what wasn't what could have been. Now we have to take that energy from your past, really throw it to your future, right? Catapult it to your future, anchor it in your future. So what could be, right? What could be, all of the possibilities if we shift our focus. All right. So the disclaimer for today is that this lesson is for educational and informational purposes only. It's not therapy. It's not therapy or medical advice. Listening and participating in today's conversation does not create a client therapy relationship between you and myself. All right. But this lesson, though, will help you become aware of the grief that you've been carrying. All right. But we know that awareness is only the first step, you guys. Transformation truly happens when you take action, by naming the loss, by honoring the pain, by giving yourself permission to grieve. And that in that state of doing, may require you to get some support. So if you're experiencing deep grief, some type of trauma, some type of, dis-ease, please seek some immediate attention, right? Go get a therapist, call a crisis, right? Get the help that you need so that you can start to shape your life. All right. All right. So good morning. It's Mindset Reset Monday. I want to take our deep breath, no pressure, just your presence on this Monday. So we're going to inhale. I give myself permission to grieve. All right. And then we want to exhale. I honor what I've lost. All right. I honor what I've lost. One more time, I give myself permission to breathe. And then out with, I honor my loss. Welcome again to Life Lessons. Welcome to Project Life. And the whole initiative around Project Life is to help you turn theory into practice, turn awareness into alignment, and really making healing a daily habit, or an appetite. All right. A part of that project is this life lesson with Dr. Sheila Little. So if you're new here, I'm Dr. Sheila Little, right? I'm Dr. Sheila Little. I've been a clinical therapist for 20 years. I now serve as an emotional strategist, and a business and life coach. So I thank you. I thank you for your time. I always feel like your time is your most valuable asset. So I thank you for investing that here with me. So drop a word in the chat. Let me know how you're feeling on this morning. And if you bossy, right? Drop a word in the chat that describes what you are grieving, right? What have you lost, right? That you could possibly be grieving. All right. So let's, as you do that, let's prepare for your body scan on this morning. So let's get present in our bodies, putting that sun at the top of our head, because when we start to talk about grief, there is a sensation that can come over us, or this need to shut down. And we just don't want to do that on this morning. We want to be present because we're safe to have this conversation, right? All of the stuff that could be flooding in, all of the emotions that's coming up, know that that's a part of your biology, right? And you, though, I was going to say the kernel of the tank, you as the, as the driver, right? You can sit in that, right? We can sit in that and it's safe. So let's put that sun over our head. Allow that sun to drop down in our bodies, and we're feeling it, that warmth starting at our feet. All right. Grounding ourselves, right. In safety as we grieve. All right. As we grieve. And then we're going to move up our legs, right, into our hips. And then just breathe into our stomach, okay, where grief really sits like a heavy weight sometimes, right? Up our spine, just acknowledging our nervous system, right? And then we're gonna feel our chest up with that warm sunlight, right? A lot of times our chest is where we hold a lot of the pain that we lost, all right? Up our shoulders, right? Where the burden often of that unspoken grief lives. So we're just going to warm our shoulders up so that that grief can lift off of us, down our arms, activating our hands. A lot of times when we're grieving, it's hard to be productive, right? And so we want to warm our hands and fill our hands up with that compassion and that love on today. All right, softening your jaws as we go up our necks, really warming up that throat chakra, opening our mouths to really speak about the grief. A lot of times when we talk about our grief, we remind other people of theirs, and so we tend to not want to create a burden or put a load on people, and so we don't talk about the things that bother us. But on this morning, we want to acknowledge and really just open up our throat chakra, right? Releasing, right? Releasing that permission to talk about this thing that you're grieving, or this situation or circumstances. All right. Again, your throat is where your words, the words that you never got the opportunity to speak get stuck. All right. And then up our face, softening our ears for this conversation, soften our eyes so we can see where the support is that we need, right? And then activating our brains, right? Neuroplasticity is so important, right? Rewiring how we feel about experiencing grief and what we know grief to be, okay? And then out the top of our heads, just going down our largest organ, which is our skin, right? And just protecting us on today as we inhale, I am safe to grieve, right? And then I honor my loss. I honor my loss. Okay. So how am I feeling this morning? I am feeling very much excited, about a little nervous about today's conversation. Like I said, grief is one of those sticky situations, or one of those conversations. Good morning, Miss Hollis. Grief is one of those conversations. And so I definitely want to be responsible, right, as I talk about the weight we carry in our grief, and be very specific that, it's not the people that we grieve. A lot of times it's versions of ourselves. I just had a cousin, and I love her because she's so ambitious, and and I call her like my sister cousin, right? And she just got a job, and she was very much settled in one space in her career, and she got this opportunity to switch jobs. And so it brought her closer to her family. So, she moved from this very settled, what she had worked for. She had her apartment and was really doing well. And so she moved back closer to her family in this new position. And one of the things that she was praying for was like expansion, and to be challenged more in life and things like that. And in her mind, she thought it was going to happen in this current position, but the company offered her a lateral position, and she took it. And one of the things when she was telling me about the move and like all of the challenges, that she was having, and I was like, it's okay to grieve your old situation. And she was like, I'm so glad you said that, because I got this new position and I'm getting all of these congratulations, and people are looking at me different, and now I'm a manager. And and this idea, like I should just be so happy, and I am, but I was happy there too, right? Like she had truly created um a idea of her life in that place before, that she was going to stay in that position for some years, and really solidify herself in that community, and that didn't happen. And a lot of times we switch jobs, we switch careers, we switch our subjects in college, right? And and so this idea is like, I'm supposed to be happy. I got this new pay, I got this new relationship, I got this new car, I got this new house. And we never really acknowledge what we had, what was the opportunity cost of that. All right. And sometimes the opportunity cost is friendships, colleagues that we no longer communicate with, because that's what the brain know. And so today is truly about making space for that. So this lesson is for you if you dismiss your pain, because it could be worse, right? Right. In some way, there's this blessing that you have experienced, right? and or there's some growth or anything that you have experienced, and so you're not allowing yourself to feel, because it could be worse, right? If you compared your grief to others and minimized your own, right? So if you are comparing what you're experiencing pain wise, right, to other people, and so yours doesn't seem as important, you feel stuck and you don't know why, and then you've lost someone that mattered, and you've moved, you've never really acknowledged that, or you lost something that mattered, and you never really acknowledged that. This is for you if you're grieving something that you never named. I think about, I was watching Instagram over the weekend, and a young lady was talking about, she had got diagnosed with a breast cancer, and it was like a stage 0 breast cancer, and she said that she hadn't really told nobody like in 2 years, right? And she's emotional, you could see the tears in her eyes, and because she caught it early and she didn't have to go through chemo, and all of those things, but she ended up getting a mastectomy. I think that's what you call it. I think she got two, but she took that space to really honor, like, hey, even though I didn't go through what other people went through, and even though it was a 0 stage and she caught it early, like, she recognized that that situation, being identified as having breast cancer twice, definitely affected her, and she was giving herself permission to really grieve, right? Grieve her experience, and I hearted it and I prayed for it. And there's so many of us who compare, right, what we're going through to somebody else, and we really don't honor, what our experience is, what our uniqueness is. And it's so interesting because we want to be honored for our uniqueness. We want to be seen for who we are, right? We want to be, in this sense, recognized, but we fail a lot of times to do that ourselves. So let's talk about it. We're talking about the weight of unspoken grief. When you've lost something that matters, but you've never given yourself permission to mourn it. All right, listen, grief isn't just about death. It's about the dreams that didn't come true. It's about the relationship that ended. It's about the person that you were before life got hard. All right. It's about the hope you had before disappointment set in. And when you dismiss grief, all right, it doesn't just go away. Okay. It just recycles, and it recycles into some dis-ease, and that dis-ease can look like anxiety, depression, bitterness, and sometimes even numbness, you guys. So when we start talking about the nervous system work, right, really this very much emotional disconnect, or fight, freeze, and fawn, and we're wondering why, and it's like, yeah, because your body is still holding on to the thing you lost, and you haven't given it permission, right, or a space to really heal and let that go. Because here's what nobody told you: grief denied becomes pain recycled. Healing begins when you stop invalidating your own feelings. All right. So I have another client, and she was a high achiever. She had a great career, the family, and the life that everyone admired. But she came to my office feeling empty. All right, feeling this numbness or lack of fulfillment. She said, "I don't understand why I feel this way. I had everything. I have everything I ever wanted. I should really be happy." And again, I asked her, "What did you give up to get here? What did you give up to get here?" And you know what she whispered? "I gave up everything. I gave up everything." All right. She had sacrificed her creativity. She had sacrificed her friendships, her rest, her joy. All right. All to build the life that she thought she was supposed to have. And now that she had that stuff and had those things, she felt hollow, you guys, because she had never grieved what she actually gave up. And so we spent months together really working on helping her name the things that she lost. All right. The artist that she used to be, the friendships that faded away as a pursuit of her perceived happiness. All right. And the freedom that that she traded for a sense of security. All right. And you know what? The moment she acknowledged that grief, you can see it. She started to heal. All right. It wasn't about her dropping everything, right? It wasn't about her going back to those dreams and goals, you know? The reason she started to heal was not because the losses disappeared, you guys. It was because she finally honored them. Again, you cannot heal what we are not willing to honor. All right, what we're not willing to honor. And again, I just think a lot of us, we have a life that we're not happy in, right? And we're looking at it and we're like, well, I should be so happy. And I just want you to ask yourself, but what did it cost me to get here? Okay. What cost did I pay? And a lot of times when we don't do that, what ends up happening is we feel, like we made the wrong decision. All right. And that what we have right now is not sufficient. And sometimes that's just not it. Sometimes your emotion is being contained in this space of what it cost you, and you haven't acknowledged that. All right. So again, I have to be honest, I carry unspoken grief for years, right? I grieved the childhood that I couldn't have, right? Really growing up as starting to work at 12, 13 years old and becoming a responsible one, right? I definitely didn't have, the I guess the childhood I wanted in my mind, right? The doll houses and the Cabbage Patch Kids and things like that. There was a lot of passed down clothes, and my grandparents were Jehovah Witnesses, so we didn't like celebrate Christmas, and it was just a lot of things that I felt like I wanted as a youth that I didn't get to experience. Okay. There was other things that I had to grieve, the safety that I never felt, the version of me that trusted, right, before I got in a relationship. I shared with you guys about how, when I got into that long-term relationship, how I was like this loving person, and then that relationship kind of tapered that in me, right, where I noticed I wasn't saying I love you as much as I would have, right? In a sense, to feel safe in this relationship or to acquiesce, right? And so by the time I got to my 20s and 30s, it was like I had just totally detached, right? In the sense, I had become so numb, all right? But what I never did was I never called it grief, right? I called it being strong. I'm fine, pushing through. I called it, breaking generational traumas, right? I called it so many things. And that dismissal, it kept, in a sense, it kept the pain alive, so much so that I started to numb, right? Like I just didn't want to feel it anymore. Okay. And in my mid 30s, I just, realized that, oh, you can grieve things, right? That was like kind of my first time realizing that. And I'm like, oh, it's not just people that we grieve. It's like things and versions of ourselves that we grieve. And I'm grieving, and that's okay. All right. And I actually started the healing process. And what I realized is that grieving is a daily part of my life. It's a program that I want to put out, and I put a lot of energy into it, but as a part of putting that program together, something sparks, and I branch off from that, and that thing that I wanted to do is like, oh, we're not going to be able to do that, or I'm not going to be able to do that. But as a consequence of doing all that research, this other thing, right, happened, and all my energy was on thing A. But what I realized was thing A actually got me to even like a project life or something like that. So as a CEO, I feel like I'm grieving these ideas and these things, but I have to honor that space and understand that that's a process. All right. So here's your mirror. If that makes sense, put a heart in the chat for me. All right. If that makes sense, put a heart in the chat for me. And let me know, like, is the conversation relevant? Are you grieving? Right? Is there aspects of you that you have yet to acknowledge that relationship? I do feel like the relationship with my kid's father was a big grief for me, because in my mind, like I definitely felt like we were going to be together, we were going to raise these kids, these was going to be my legacy partners, right? And I, in a sense, fought for, shit change. Like, who do I need to be? Do I need to cook more? Do I need to do all of these things before I let it go? And when I let it go, I definitely played victim at first, like he just didn't love me, didn't pay attention, all of that. But the truth of the matter was that when it boiled down to it, I think that our season was over. We had served our purpose as parents and things like that, and just allowing myself to grieve that relationship, of my idea of what I wanted that relationship to be. you know um if it was, his wife one day, grieving that idea that he would not be my husband, even though everything that I've done, that living with him and living with him and, sharing bank accounts and, opening my womb up, and this man is not going to be my husband. You know what I mean? And I had to allow myself to feel that, process that, and still know that I was okay, right? I was okay, and it's okay, and wanting him to be happy and wanting me to be happy. And it was hard to get to wanting him to be happy and wanting myself to be happy, right? And really solidifying that he is still my legacy partner. We still have these kids together, and we still, or now these young men together, that we're going to be parenting their, grandparents. We're going to be grandparents and great grandparents. And how do we now redefine this relationship? Because it's so much more at stake than just our feelings. And so really grieving that was a big part of me being able to transition, support him in all his ways, right? And support myself in that. But I give that example because, I had braided myself so much into that relationship where his sisters became my sisters, his dad became my dad, and I just didn't see myself unbraiding. And so the reality that I had to unbraid myself is like, well, who are you? You've been in this relationship since you was 21. Now you're 35. Like, what is happening? And when it boiled down to it, life was happening. And at the end of the day, I'm safe, right? I'm safe. And so many of us have braided ourselves into relationships and expected things out of these relationships. And I just want you to know today, it's okay. It's okay to grieve that. So here's your mirror moment. What are you grieving right now? Okay, a relationship, a version of you, or an unfilled hope. All right, just take a deep breath and let that question sit in your body. Okay, sit in your body. All right, and most importantly, I want you to ask what part of you is still waiting, right? What part of you is still waiting to be acknowledged in that grief? All right, all right. So here's 5 things that I want you to know that your grief. Here's 5 things that your grief wants you to know. Let me say it like that. All right. So your grief wants you to know that your pain is valid. All right. Even if no one died, your pain is valid. Even if it wasn't like an actual death. All right. Grief isn't just about death. It just isn't about death. You can grieve a version of yourself. You can grieve, again, a dream, a relationship, a season of your life. All right. And if it mattered to you, it deserves to be mourned. All right. If it mattered to you, it deserves to be mourned. So stop comparing your grief to someone else's. All right. Your loss was real. I think about my son, who was a football player, and he loved football. And I think about his life because he had saw that so much for himself. And I just think that as a supportive parent, I'm like, I know you love football. Some things some choices he made as far as his grades and things like that he didn't get to, or he had yet to do that. But I still try to encourage him, but to watch him grieve that because I know he loved football and I know that, he wanted that to be a part of his experience, at the collegiate level. And I think he has yet to still do that, especially with the new rules and stuff. But it's like supporting him through that, you know, um, because when he had that vision for himself, it's like nothing else. Like, I don't want to play basketball. I don't want to do this. I'm going to play football. And like I said, with grades and stuff like that, he's 20, so he still has a lot of life ahead of him. But I do think he feels stuck, you know? And it's like, well, work out, do what you can do, go to junior college, let's put a different plan in place. But his heart, it's kind of hard to get him to see that it's so much more life for you, you know. But just not uh getting to go to school, I do think I I grieve that for him, I grieve that for him. So again, you know, um, I think it's important to acknowledge it. So again, dismissing your grief doesn't make it go away. Okay. It just buries it alive, you guys. So when you say it could be worse or other people have it harder, you're not being strong. Okay. You're avoiding the pain. And the thing about it is that grief denied becomes pain recycled again. So it shows up as anxiety and depression and numbness and bitterness. Okay. And again, when we have this life, I shared that about my son, but when we have these dreams and goals, I think um that we have to honor that space and acknowledge that it exists, and dismissing it doesn't make it go away. It just stirs. And like I said, instead of, for me, it definitely is, instead of running away from it, it's about acknowledging that space and holding the space for my son, and, being able to talk about it myself, and how do I support him in that. And because I've experienced it, and like I said, I work with people who experience it, and it's a part of life. Okay, it's a part of life, and it's a part of our walk. So number three, okay, you don't need closure to heal. You just need acknowledgement. All right. You're waiting for closure that may never come. All right. So the relationship that ended without an explanation, the dream that died without a reason. Um, guess what? But healing doesn't always require closure, you guys. And I know that we think that too. Like, to heal, I need to talk to this person, I need to understand. But a lot of times it just don't, right? Healing requires you to name the loss and then honor that, right? Honor that. All right. Number four, grief wants you to know that grief is not linear, and that's okay. Listen, you don't get over it in stages. All right. So it's not like that, right? Grief comes in waves. So some days you feel fine. Some days, it hits you like it hits you out of nowhere, right? You can be in a conversation like me. I've talked about that about my son a lot, you know what I mean? But talking about it while talking about grief, I do think it just hit me emotionally different. And so honoring that space to allow that to come up, reminding myself that I'm safe, that my son's safe, that he still has the rest of his life. But I'm going to acknowledge that space of that emotional space, right? Again, because grief can hit you at any time. All right. It doesn't mean that you're broken. It means that we're human, you guys, and things are going to make us emotional, and things are going to come up, right? About the things that we grieve. So give yourself permission to grieve in your own time, and more importantly, in your own way. Good morning. Good morning, friend. Good morning, Miss Gladys. How are you doing this morning? Um, Number five, honoring your grief is how you honor what was lost. All right. So when you acknowledge your loss by saying, this matters, you matter, I matter, listen, this is not weakness. This is love. All right. And that's respecting yourself. All right. And that is a form of healing. All right. So here's some insight. If that makes sense, put a heart in the chat for me. So here's some insight I want you to know. You're dismissing your grief because you've been taught that strength means not feeling. All right. That in some way to allow yourself to feel is a form of weakness. All right. But grief denied, again, becomes pain recycled, because you can't heal what you won't honor, you guys. And every time you minimize your pain, you keep it alive. All right. Every time you acknowledge it, every time you minimize your pain, you keep it alive. But every time you acknowledge it, you give yourself actually the space and permission to heal. All right. So when you honor your grief, it helps you to stop carrying the weight and start really integrating this new version of who you are. All right, this new version of who you are. So I had a client that said, when I finally named what I lost, I stopped feeling stuck. All right. I didn't need closure. I just needed to acknowledge the pain. All right. I just needed to acknowledge the pain. I have worked with athletes in my practice as a therapist, and a lot of them who have been injured, or all they know themselves as athletes, they have this grief of idea of them, right? I've worked with mothers who now their kids are older, right? And they're not the mom to the 2, 3, 4 year old. They're moms to adults now, right? And so they're grieving that. I've worked with fathers, right, who didn't get the opportunity to, be in their son's life or their child's life at a young age, and all of the possibilities, and they're grieving that, right? I work with prisoners who, was away from their families, and and they're grieving that, right? What could have been. And I just want you to know that there's a space for that, right? There's a space for that. And once we can reconcile that, then we can start where you at, right? We can start where you're at and be able to move forward in your life. All right. So we're talking about the love of self on today. All right. And I think it's important uh, that we acknowledge the weight we carry with the grief in terms of our love of self. All right. And so here's 5 essential things about grief in the love of self. So grief is not a sign of weakness, you guys. It's an evidence of love. All right. Grief is not a sign of weakness. It's an evidence that you have loved. All right. So if you're grieving, it means you cared about something. It means you love something. All right. All right. You tried. All right. And that's not something to dismiss. That's something to actually honor. All right. This was something that was important to me. This is something that I love. This is something that that I tried to do, that I tried to make happen. And we have to make space for that. All right. Number 2, comparing your grief to others invalidates your pain. All right. We all have our own pain tolerance level. So just because someone else has bigger grief doesn't mean that yours didn't matter. Perceive bigger grief. Pain isn't something that we're in competition with. All right. My pain is bigger than your pain. Your pain is bigger than my pain. We don't have to compete about our pain. Okay. Your loss is real and it deserves, you guys, to be mourned. Okay. And it deserves to be mourned. All right. Um, you don't owe anyone an explanation for your grief. All right. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your grief. Listen, some people won't understand why you're still grieving. Okay. And that's their business. All right. And it's okay. All right. Your healing doesn't require their approval. All right. Grieve in your own time, in your own way. And if that's challenging for you, just make sure you go get help and support. I know that people try to rush you through your grief and things like that. But I just want you to know it's okay. Yeah, my brother didn't put like a sad emoji in the comments, and then he said, "It's okay, sis." He's just such a supportive brother. I know it's okay, brother. Thank you, though. I appreciate that. I appreciate it. That was about my tears. So thank you so much. Number 5, self-love means giving yourself permission to grieve. Listen, you've been strong for so long. You've held together for so long. You've kept moving. Okay. All right, we don't have to prove your strength anymore. You are a resilient, strong individual. Okay. But self-love does say, I'm gonna say and self-love says it's okay to stop. Okay. It's okay to stop and feel. All right. And it's okay to grieve. All right. We can let it come up and then come out. And if it got to come up 10 times and come out, or come up 20 times to come out, or if it needs to come up 50 times, we're going to give it space. Right. Because when we learn to honor that space in ourselves, then people learn to honor our pace. Okay. They learn to honor our pace. Does that make sense? If that makes sense, put a heart in the chat for me. All right, so here's our biblical wisdom on this Mindset Reset Monday. You guys, listen, Matthew 5:4, blessed are those who mourn, okay, for they will be comforted. All right. So the interpretation of this is this verse isn't just about religion, it's permission, you guys. Blessed are those who mourn. Notice blessed, the word blessed. It doesn't say weak are the ones who mourn. It doesn't say broken is the ones who mourn. It says blessed are the ones who mourn. So the God in you, guess what? Your divine self, that your soul, it knows that mourning is sacred, you guys. So grief isn't just something that we rush past, right? It's something that we honor. And the biggest thing I see with grief is one, avoidance, right? The avoidance of the reality. So there, and that's a stage, right? This lack of acceptance of what has happened, right? And so we dance around that, which can keep us stuck in grief, right? Because the reality of what happens is still so hard to accept. And so I think that's the biggest thing I see with grief, right? And so however long it takes you to accept that reality, right, within yourself, I want to say this. Acceptance is your way through. And if you're having an issue with accepting, right, where you're at in your life, then I would say get an objective person and get a person to hold a space for you so that it's safer to acknowledge what is. All right. And I think that we wait for so long to go get support when we're grieving, or when we lose something. And I think as a form of self-love, we should do that a little faster. All right. We should do that a little faster, because the scriptures say, blessed are those who mourn. All right. So again, the God in you, that spiritual divine self, it knows that mourning is sacred, you guys, and grief isn't something that we rush past. It's something that we honor it. In a way to honor that is by getting the help and the support we need. And neuroplasticity actually supports this. It says when you allow yourself to grieve, your brain's ventral vagal nervous system, or ventral vagal system, activates. This is the part of the nervous system that creates safety and connection. All right. So, but when you suppress, guess what? Your brain stays in that sympathetic mode, which is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And mourning isn't it. So it stays in fight, fight, freeze, or fawn. So I want you to know that mourning isn't a weakness, you guys. It's a pathway to healing. All right. It's a pathway to healing. I love that. Kind of scared me. All right. So in modern terms, or in other words, when you give yourself permission to grieve, you create a space for healing. Okay. Comfort doesn't come from avoiding pain. It comes from moving through. Okay. It comes from moving through. Your promise verse for today, Psalms 147:3. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds, you guys. So in interpretation, notice it says he heals the brokenhearted. It didn't say the perfect hearted. It didn't say the strong hearted, but it said the broken hearted. All right. So the God within you doesn't require you to be whole, okay, before you're loved. The loved, you've loved in that patternness, all right, in that disconnect, in that dis-ease. And when you allow yourself to be vulnerable and acknowledge that, guess what? That's an opportunity for healing to occur. And in this grief that you're looking to heal, all right, the more you judge it, then the more you're going to resist, right? You're going to resist even acknowledging the pain and the discomfort that you have. But the verse says he heals the brokenhearted, all right, and binds up their wounds. All right. So this doesn't so the God in you, again, doesn't require you to be whole before you're loved. All right. You're loved in that brokenheartedness. All right. And you're healed in your grief. All right. You're healed in your grief. Neuroscience actually supports this. All right. So when grief is acknowledged and held with compassion, the brain's frontal cortex, which is the wise brain, you guys, comes online. All right. This allows you to integrate the loss, right? To integrate the loss within your life rather than avoid it. All right. Because once that prefrontal cortex comes into play, then you start to think differently. All right. You become a participant in your life. So healing doesn't mean that the pain disappears, you guys, but it does mean that you learn how to carry it, all right, differently. And I just think that that's it. We just need to learn how to carry our pain differently, not run away from it, not dismiss it, not, act like it's not there, but learn how to carry it differently, build a different relationship with it. Some of us put our pain right in front of everybody, and we make it the thing that everybody sees, right? And we wear it like a badge. Some of us hide it, right? Which is a trauma response, right? But some of us, we hide it and we, tuck it away and we become strong and all of that, and I just think we have to learn how to build a different relationship with pain, because pain is going to be a part of your life for the rest of your life. All right. And if we're trying to hide from it, or if we're running towards it, or if we're using it as our shield, or if we're using it as a part of who we are, we're hiding it, you know, it's a part of us, right? So why not embrace that this is a part of our relationship with ourselves? This is going to be a part of our relationships with other people. This is going to be a part of our focus, right? There's some pain in how we focus when we're trying to create focus and balance in our life, and in a part of our emotional experience. And so many of us have set up our lives in such that, we've experienced so much pain because of this grief that, everybody is a red flag. Like, if you hurt my feelings, if you even think that you're going to cause me any pain, then you can just move on. And it's like, that's just so unrealistic, right? Pain is a part of life. Grieving is a part of life. And we have to give ourselves permission to do that. So let's sit into our intention on today. I want you to place your hand on your heart, take a deep breath, hold it, and exhale. Now I want you to speak this intention. Listen, I give myself permission to grieve. All right. I honor what I've lost. I release the lie that pain doesn't matter. I receive the truth that grief is evidence that I have loved. All right. And me grieving my life is evidence that I have loved me. All right. And I am safe to mourn that. I am worthy to be comforted in that. All right. All right. Now take your breath again. All right. If you say that, you start the shift. And when you start that shift, that's where healing begins. So my anchor question for you as we wrap up today's session: how does it feel in your body to know that you don't have to dismiss your grief anymore? All right. How does it feel in your body to know that you don't have to dismiss your grief anymore? All right. So here's your integration or your action steps to put this into practice on today. So I want you to name one thing that you're grieving, that you've noticed or that you've never acknowledged out loud. All right. Write it down. Just note it. All right. A journal or voice note, one goodbye note that you've never said. All right. So journey or voice note, one goodbye that you've never said. And then say it out loud. This matters to me. And that's okay. All right. This matters to me. Okay. And then your journal prompt for today: what am I grieving right now? A relationship, a version of me, or an unfulfilled hope. Okay. And then here's your audit: I'm grieving the loss of what? I've dismissed the grief by saying what? What I really need to say is what? And honoring this loss would mean what? Okay. And then your affirmation for today: I honor my pain because it proves that I felt deeply. All right. I honor my pain because it proves that I felt deeply. So stop saying that you ain't an emotional person. Stop saying that you won't. Listen, the mere fact that you're experiencing pain is a testament that you have felt deeply. All right. And then your intention statement for today: today, I choose to honor what I've lost instead of dismissing it. All right. Listen, this week, your bonus challenge is to speak one goodbye out loud to a dream, to a relationship, to a version of you. You don't need closure. You just need acknowledgement, you guys. This is one of those conversations where we just need to be, and we need to be okay with being. We don't have to do anything. We're acknowledging. This is not about packing up, it's not about doing anything. It's just about expanding yourself enough to be present with your pain. And I work with a lot of clients because, okay, what do I do now? Okay, now that I've done that, nothing. You don't do anything. And that's the thing about grief. We're trying to do something with it versus being present with it. And today, we're just going to be present with our grief from our love of self, right? From that version of us we um that we thought would happen, that we could have happened, right? That we have stuffed down, that we have avoided. We just gonna be with it today. We don't have to do nothing, right? Just acknowledge it. I know that made you sad, right? Breathe in, let it come up if it needs to, but we're gonna hold a space for it. And that's just being present with it. So if your mind is like, okay, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? That is a part of the avoidance, because we jump right to doing. And a big part of this project is to help you to be okay with just being. Okay, I was emotional today in today's life lesson. I don't have to do anything with that. I got present with that. I allowed that to come up and it's gone. All right. I acknowledged it. I thank myself for that vulnerable moment on the inside. And I allow myself to be with that. Right. And I don't have to do anything with that. It came up. Oh, you still feel that. I get you. You're safe in that. You really care about your son. Right. Okay. And we let it go. All right. So we don't have to do anything with it. And I think a lot of times we feel like, okay, what do I need to do now? Do what I mean? No, you don't. Just be with it. If it's hard for you to be with it, then that's when I say get a coach, get a therapist, and learn how to be safe in your emotions. All right. Learn how to be safe in your emotions. All right. So here's your call, your challenge, and your charge. What truth are you walking away with today? That's what I'm calling and asking. Your challenge, journal, or voice note, one goodbye that you never said out loud. And then your charge, you already know, go shape your life. All right. Not by dismissing your grief, but by honoring it, you guys, but by honoring it. All right. Because here's some closing reminders. You can't heal what you won't honor. All right. You've been dismissing your grief because you thought strength meant not feeling. All right. Another thing I want you to know, you thought that strength was not feeling, but grief isn't weakness, you guys. It's evidence that you actually loved, that you actually care, and that you actually tried. All right. And today, we're just giving space, right? We're giving you permission to really name what you lost and honor it. And we don't have to do nothing with that. We don't got to throw our life up. We don't got to change anything. We can just be with that and honor that. Listen, you don't need closure to heal. You just need a space to acknowledge what you thought was going to be. And you're living in a different reality. All right. Tomorrow is Transformational Tuesday. And we're talking about how grief changes the way we see people and ourselves. Okay. So I want you to know that grief denied becomes that a pain cycle. All right. Pain recycled. I'm sorry. And healing begins when you stop invalidating your own feelings. So tonight, I want you to say this out loud. I honor my pain because it proves that I felt deeply, because you did. And that in itself, it matters, you guys. And if you need me to give you permission, I'm saying that this lesson is your permission to slip into a space where you can honor the grief that you have been carrying. You already know. If this lesson really resonated with you and you are walking away with some insight, drop a fire in the chat for me. Drop a fire in the chat for me. And let's continue to celebrate our growth. Okay. Let's continue to celebrate our growth. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you join that Elevating Life group with myself, right? In the community that's over there. And as we end, you know that, if you're having some issues with showing up for yourself and really processing grief, and you've acknowledging that, hey, you know what, there is some things that I'm probably grieving and I need some support in that, make sure you go join the project. And if you don't want to be a part of the project, DM me for other services and supports that I can provide to help you with in this season of your life. I want you to remember this. If you can shape it in your mind, you can have it in your life. I love you. I love you. I love you. And I will see you tomorrow for that life lesson. Till later.